squishy toy, like a squishy little soft toy, like a monster of the week. Who are we going to fight today, y'all? Ha 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 ha. Okay, we need to talk about the Vampire Diaries universe because somehow they went from the Vampire Diaries, the originals, to Legacies, and only 2 out of 3 of those actually work. I wonder which one. But that is wild because the originals proved that a sequel can be better. It proved that you can make a messy, dramatic, supernatural world and make it darker, deeper, and more emotionally intense. So how did they go from that to Legacies? A show that feels like it doesn't even want to live in the same universe. Let's talk about it. Here's the thing. The Vampire Diaries was already dark. At its core, The Vampire Diaries is a supernatural teen drama about Elena Gilbert, a normal girl who gets pulled into a world of vampire witches and werewolves after meeting 2 vampire brothers, Stefan and Damon Salvatore. But the real hook was never just the love triangle. Even when Elena, Caroline, and Bonnie were in school, there was death, there was loss, there was manipulation, y'all. So much manipulation, so much. There were consequences, so much consequences. It was a teen drama, yes, okay, capiche? But it had teeth. You get that reference? You got the reference? Okay, I just wanted to throw that in. Okay. Anyway, the dynamics were messy. Stefan, the good vampire, fighting his nature of being a ripper. Damon, the bad vampire who slowly proves he can care. And then Elena, stuck in the middle, constantly paying the emotional cost. And over time, the show becomes less about school and more about survival, sacrifice, and who you become when everything is taken from you. That's the DNA of this universe. And then the originals. The originals came along and say, okay, what if we take the same universe and focus on the first vampires ever, the Michelson family? 1,000 years of history, 1,000 years of drama, so much trauma, 1,000 years of grudges. The synopsis is basically powerful, broken vampire family returns to New Orleans to reclaim their city and protect their legacy while constantly destroying each other in the process. What if we make this about family, power, legacy, and trauma? Because you can have a lot of family if you live that long, you know? And it worked. It was even more darker, more mature, more political, more tragic than the Vampire Diaries. The Michelsons were chaos. They were chaos. You saw that in the Vampire Diaries a little bit, but in the originals, oh yeah, they were messy, toxic, but also compelling. Like, Klaus is a monster, but he's also a father. Elijah is honorable and fine, but also enabler. Rebecca, Rebecca wants love, but is trapped in the same cycle. It's tragic, it's political, it's emotionally heavy, and most importantly, the tone matches the characters. Whoa, mind blown, right? It feels like a natural evolution of the Vampire Diaries, not a downgrade, not a reset. Okay, y'all, come on, they did really well. Give them. Okay, it was an evolution of a universe that you don't really see that often in dramas like this. Come on. Now, let's talk about Legacies. The synopsis sounds good on paper. A new generation of supernatural teens attend the Salvatore School, a place meant to protect and train witches, vampires, and werewolves, including Hope Michelson, the daughter of Klaus. So already you're like, okay, next generation. Legacy characters. Oh yes, this is going to be amazing. This is going to eat a continuation of the universe. Cool, right? But here's the thing. Legacies doesn't just continue the story, it changes the drama. It changes the whole genre up on us. It's not dark like anymore. It becomes monster of the week. Who are we going to fight today, y'all? Ha 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 ha. Lighter in tone, more comedic, more supernatural high school than supernatural tragedy, which is okay. But you're picking back off of two dramas that wasn't like that, and it feels like the show is trying to build a new fan base instead of fully honoring the thousand, maybe even millions of people who were already there. This is where I think they really fumbled. How about an example? Look at Marvel. Marvel has a big comic fan base. They didn't ignore them, they respect them, they build something that fans could vouch for, and because fans care, they brought in more people. You get what I'm saying? Word of mouth. That's what Marvel did very well. And with that, created emotional investment, cultural momentum. That's how a franchise grow. Legacy could have done the same thing. They already had, let me repeat that again. They already had Vampire Diary fans, originals fans, years of lore, iconic characters, emotional history. That's, oh my gosh, I hiccup right there. 5 things. If they have nailed the tone, that fan base would have carried the show, because they can honestly be the critiquers and also the haters. They could have brought in the new viewers naturally. Instead, it feels like they tried to reset the vibe. And doing that, they lost part of what made the universe special. I honestly think it starts with the school settings. Now, don't get me wrong here. A supernatural school can work. But in Legacy, it didn't feel like the same world. In Vampire Diaries, the school was just a setting. Bad things still happen. Dark things still happen. People still died. People actually died, came back to life, then died again, and then came back to life. In Legacies, the school became the vibe, which could have worked, but everything just felt softer, like a squishy toy, like a squishy little soft toy, like Oswald back there, so cute, so cute. It became too light, too clean, too monster of the week. It started feeling like a teen fantasy show instead of a continuation of one of the most dramatic and chaotic supernatural universes ever, that proved that a sequel to a TV show could be good, right? And that's the disconnect. These are not random kids. These are the children of Klaus Michelson, Carolina Forbes, Alaric Saltzman, Damon and Stefan's entire legacy, literally centuries of trauma and violence. And yet, the show treats it like, welcome to Supernatural High School. Okay, y'all, let's solve today's creature problem and hope you get an A+ on everything that's going and we don't die. The tone just doesn't match the history that everybody loved, right? Now, they did try to make Legacies darker later into the show, but it didn't flow because the show started in one lane, campy, like episodic, right? And then they tried to subtly become serious, and it felt, well, off. In the Vampire Diaries and the originals, the darkness is baked It's in the characters. It's in the choices. Elena literally started the show in her little graveyard, writing her little diary, bro, with her little smoke. Yeah, yeah, it's in the consequences. It's in the choices already baked into those characters. In Legacies, the darkness feels like a costume change. It's sometimes literally a costume change. Like, I'm sorry, I cannot take you seriously if the evil version of a character looks like they came from Spirit Halloween Rack. Hope's darker arc worked a little better visually, but even then, we already seen bad done better. We seen Klaus. We seen Damien. We seen Stefan. We even seen Catherine. Okay? And what made them scary wasn't the outfits. It was the writing. Stefan character from good guy Stefan to Ripper Stefan was like chef kisses. The choices he made, the emotional weight that he had, that was a character written well. And let's talk about Hope specifically, because Hope Michelson should have stood out. Not just because she's special, but because of where she comes from. She is Klaus and Haley's daughter. We see all the stuff that she went through in the originals. That should mean something in the tone of the show. She should feel like just another student with power. She shouldn't have feel like that. There should have been a weight to her presence, a sense that this is not just a kid at a magic school. This is a Michelson. You can keep the school, but the characters, especially Hope, should have carried the shadow of that legacy. Especially with Carolina kids being there. For anything, I thought they should have bonded or already be friends, and then maybe I would have accepted some of these love interests that they had. But boy, oh boy, it's kind of hard to do that for the love interest. Okay, I'm sorry. That's coming up in the next session. We'll talk about next. Instead, the show often treats that history like background lore, not like something that actively shapes the story. This is another thing that really didn't work for me in Legacies. You remember the thing that I said I was about to bring back up? I'm bringing it back up. A lot of the characters are kind of bland. And instead of fixing that with writing, with motives, with flaws, contradictions, hard choices, the show tries to fix it with powers. Do y'all know who I'm talking about? Like, oh, this character feels a little boring. Give them a new ability. Make them a phoenix. But powers are not personality. They're just accessories at the end of the day. And I think the biggest example of this is Hope's main love interest for most of the show. I forgot his name. I'm sorry. But let's be honest. If you take away the supernatural abilities that he had, what's left? Not much. Compare that to the Vampire Diaries or the originals. Damien isn't interesting because he's strong. Klaus isn't interesting because he's a hybrid. They're interesting because they're broken, contradicting themselves, and emotionally dangerous to themselves and to everyone around them. And then you pile that up with people that love them. Oh yeah, you have family drama left and right. In Legacy, it often feels like the show says, don't worry, we'll make this character cooler later, instead of let's make this character deeper now. Okay, so when they try to add spice, it's usually a new power, like I just said, a new form, a new supernatural twist, but that's not a new layer. That's why a lot of the relationships, especially the romances, feel flat. Like, because you can't build emotional chemistry on lore alone, okay? You need personality, you need tension. How can you give Hope the guy that she was chasing after in original, who was human, and made him a freaking phoenix? Okay, sorry. You need real conflict that isn't solved by unlocking the next ability. And I think I know the moment I realize, oh, this isn't the same show anymore. They did a musical episode. Now listen. I'm not saying musicals are bad. I love musical personally. I was in a musical, okay? But there is a specific TV pattern that happens when a dramatic show does a musical episode. It usually means one or two things. The writers are bored, or two, they don't know what the show is anymore, and they try to shift it with a musical episode. And the second they announced that musical, my brain went, oh no, not like this. Because I remember Riverdale. If you watch Riverdale, you know exactly what I mean. That was the moment when it stopped being, oh, okay, this is weird but interesting. It became, what are we even doing here anymore, y'all? What are we doing here? And when Legacies did that, I had that exact same feeling. Not because it was cringy, not because it was silly, but because it told me this show isn't trying to be Vampire Diaries or the originals anymore. It's trying to be something else. Like we referred back to before, something lighter, something gimmicky. I don't know how they did it, but they took all the lore that was built already and made it gimmicky. Something that doesn't match the world it came from. No way. And that's when it really hit me. This isn't a continuation. This is a different genre wearing the same name. And that's fine. But don't tell me it's part of the same legacy and then act surprised when it doesn't feel like it. You're literally in Mystic Falls when you are filming this. No way that... Okay. Because I was going to stop here because I'm getting like, what's really happening? Because there was no point of return when they did that musical. When they did that musical, it was over. It was over. They tried to bring in Rebecca. They tried to bring in Klaus, but it was over. It was over, y'all. This is the biggest problem. Legacies feels like it doesn't know who it's for. It's too light for fans of the originals, too disconnected from the weight of the Vampire Diaries, even though it's stationed in Mystic Falls, but too tied to that universe to fully be its own thing. If you're going to continue this universe, you have to respect what made it work. Moral gray areas, messy relationships, real consequences, darkness that isn't just aesthetics. That's what gave this franchise its identity. Without that, it feels like a different show wearing a familiar name, a familiar font, a familiar intro, a familiar setting. Now, the Vampire Diaries built the world. The originals deepened it. Legacies softened it. And in doing that, it lost the thing that made the universe special. I don't think Legacy is unwatchable. Let me get that out of the way first. But I do think it's a missed opportunity. You might as well watch Legacies first. You might as well watch Legacy first and then watch the Vampire Diaries and originals. Because they'll be like, oh, this just got way better. Because with that legacy, with those characters, with that history, it could have been so much better. If you watch all three, I know you have opinions. I know you do. So tell me, did Legacy work for you? Or did it feel like a completely different universe with familiar names? Yeah, throwing around all the familiar names that we know. but does it work right? If you want more deep dives into shows like this, you already know where to find me. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.